The night was quiet in St. James, Long Island. A teenage girl sat nervously in the back seat of her father's car. Her phone's screen glowed as she typed hurried messages to her friends. Just moments earlier, her father had told her to wait in the car. She didn't know exactly why, but something about his voice made her uneasy. She pressed send on her text. "My dad just went inside. Something bad is happening." Inside the house, her mother, Kelly Coppola, and her mother's boyfriend, Kenneth Pohlman, were enjoying a summer evening together. Neither of them knew that danger was just a few steps away. They had no idea that Daniel Coppola, Kelly's ex-husband, had allegedly been planning this night for weeks, maybe even months. Suddenly, gunshots shattered the peace. The girl froze. A cold silence followed, broken only by the echo of her father's footsteps. The door creaked open again. He walked back toward the car, his face pale, his breath heavy. He leaned down and whispered words that would haunt her forever. "I killed your mother and Kenny." The teenager's heart pounded in her chest. She didn't know if it was real or some kind of twisted threat, but deep down, she knew the truth. Her friends' phones buzzed again as she kept texting them in panic. Inside the house, 2 lives had been cut short, and her father was standing there as if nothing had happened. That was a breaking point, the moment where betrayal, murder, and justice would collide in the most horrifying way. But to truly understand how the story reached this peak, we need to go back to the beginning, when Kelly was alive, hopeful, and trying to build a new chapter of her life. Kelly Coppola was 50 years old, a devoted mother and friend. People who knew her describe her as someone full of light, the kind of person who made others feel welcomed and cared for. She lived in St. James, a small but tight-knit community on Long Island, where everyone seemed to know one another. After years of marriage to Daniel Coppola, the relationship had finally broken apart. The divorce was messy, and though she tried to move on, Daniel's shadow never really left her. Kelly eventually found happiness again with Kenneth Pohlman, a man who made her laugh and gave her a sense of peace. To Kelly, Kenneth wasn't just a boyfriend. He was a second chance at love. Their families slowly began blending, and her children were adjusting to the new life she was creating. But in Daniel's mind, the picture was very different. He was angry, bitter. Friends and neighbors would later learn that he had never accepted the divorce. He saw Kelly's new relationship as a threat, not just his pride, but the fragile control he felt slipping away. Behind closed doors, prosecutors say Daniel began to plan. It wasn't just a crime of passion. It was deliberate, methodical, and cold. As Kelly and Kenneth enjoyed their evenings together, Daniel allegedly watched, waiting. He sent texts to their daughter, not out of fatherly concern, but to prepare her for a night she never asked to be part of. That night, on August 28, 2024, he finally acted before pulling into Kelly's driveway. He told his teenage daughter to sit in the car. At first, she thought he might just be going inside to talk. But when he walked through the door, everything changed forever. Minutes later, he emerged again, calm enough to face her and confess. The girl stared at him, frozen, unable to process the horror of what he had done. At that same moment, her texts were buzzing on her friends' phones, messages that would later help investigators piece together the timeline of the crime. She was a silent witness, trapped in a nightmare no child should ever have to face. This was not just a story about jealousy or anger. It was about betrayal at the deepest level. A father betraying his daughter, a husband betraying the vows he once made, and a man betraying the family he was supposed to protect. What came next would shock the entire community of Long Island. Neighbors would gather outside in disbelief. Detectives would uncover chilling evidence that suggested the murders were carefully planned. And the truth of what Kelly and Kenneth endured in those final moments would begin to surface. But on that night, in that car, the story hung on a single chilling confession and the terrified silence of a daughter who now held the weight of her family's darkest secret. And just when it seemed the nightmare couldn't get any worse, the next step in Daniel's plan was about to unfold. The words, "I killed your mother and Kenny," kept echoing in the teenager's mind. She sat frozen in the car, not daring to breathe too loudly. Her phone kept buzzing with messages from friends who had seen her desperate texts, but she couldn't bring herself to answer anymore. What could she even say? That her father had just admitted to something unthinkable? That the home she had once known as safe was now a crime scene? Inside the house, silence lingered. The quiet was terrifying, like the air had been sucked out of the world. Daniel Coppola walked calmly back to the car, his face stiff, his eyes locked on the road ahead. He didn't scream, didn't panic. He just sat down behind the wheel as if nothing had happened. To his daughter, that coldness was even scarier than the gunshots she had heard minutes earlier. The girl thought about running. She thought about opening the door and bolting into the night. But she didn't. She stayed, trapped in fear, knowing she couldn't outpace the man sitting next to her. This was her father, the man who had raised her, but in that moment, he was a stranger. Meanwhile, across town, Kelly's friends and family were unaware of what had happened. For them, it was just another late summer evening. Kelly had spoken of plans for the future, about wanting peace after years of divorce drama. Her relationship with Kenneth gave her hope. She wanted to be more than just the ex-wife. She wanted to be remembered as a mother, a partner, and someone who fought for her happiness. But Daniel had other plans. Investigators would later say that his actions weren't sudden. He had written about them. In his own words, prosecutors found a plan, a disturbing note that laid out his intentions in chilling detail. This was an act of rage. It was premeditated betrayal. As the night went on, the teenage daughter found her voice in the only way she could, through her phone. She sent her friends message after message, telling them what she had just witnessed. She typed that her dad had killed her mom. At first, her friends thought it was a joke, a dark prank. But when her words kept coming, panicked and desperate, they realized this was real. One of them finally did what she couldn't, called 911. The call sent shockwaves through Suffolk County Police. Dispatchers scrambled to send patrol cars to the Coppola home. Officers didn't know exactly what they would find, but the reports were chilling. 2 people shot, a child in danger, and a suspect on the move. Back at the house, neighbors began to notice something strange. Lights flickered on and off. Someone thought they heard yelling. Then, the sound of sirens grew louder, cutting through the still night air. Patrol cars raced down the quiet streets of St. James, their red and blue lights reflecting off the windows of nearby houses. Residents peeked out from behind their curtains, sensing that something terrible had happened just down the block. For the girls sitting in that car, those sirens meant hope. They meant that maybe, just maybe, this nightmare was about to end. But Daniel had other thoughts. Police later said he made disturbing remarks about ending his own life. He wasn't running, but he wasn't ready to face justice either. When the officers arrived, they secured the area around Kelly's house. The scene inside was just as horrifying as the 911 caller had described. 2 lifeless bodies, blood, evidence of a violent struggle. It was the kind of crime scene seasoned detectives never forget. The silence inside those walls told the story of betrayal louder than any words could. Outside, officers quickly surrounded Daniel's car. They pulled him from the driver's seat, their weapons drawn, unsure of what he might do next. The teenage girl was rushed away, her face pale, her hands shaking as she clutched her phone. She was safe, but her life had just changed forever. Daniel Coppola was arrested that night. Neighbors watched in shock as the once familiar man was led away in handcuffs. The image of him being pushed into the back of a police car would stay with him forever. For Kelly's loved ones, the news spread like fire. She was gone, Kenneth was gone, and the man responsible was the very person she had once married. But as shocking as the arrest was, it was only the beginning. Prosecutors were about to uncover details that made the crime even darker. The note Daniel had left behind painted a terrifying picture, a plan carefully crafted long before the trigger was ever pulled. The story was far from over. The community of St. James was about to learn that what happened that night wasn't just murder. It was a betrayal years in the making. And as investigators pieced together the evidence, the chilling truth of Daniel's intentions would come to light. Just when people thought the horror had reached its peak, the discovery of his detailed plan would push the case into an even more disturbing chapter. The discovery of Daniel Coppola's written plan shocked even the most experienced investigators. It wasn't just a scribbled note. It was a blueprint, detailed, calculated, and cold. Prosecutors revealed that Daniel had thought through every step of what he would do to Kelly and Kenneth. This wasn't a moment of losing control. It was something he had carried in his mind for a long time. For the community of St. James, this revelation was heartbreaking. People asked themselves the same question over and over. How could someone go this far? Kelly had tried to move on. She wanted peace. But her ex-husband turned her pursuit of happiness into a motive for revenge. The courtroom became the next stage of this tragedy. Journalists filled the seats, sketch artists captured the faces, and reporters whispered updates as the trial began. In the center of it all sat Daniel Coppola, his expression flat and unreadable. He was no longer the man next door or the father taking his daughter to school. He was the accused killer of his ex-wife and her boyfriend, facing the full weight of the law. Prosecutors painted a chilling picture for the jury. They described how Daniel texted his daughter to leave the house, how he walked inside, knowing what he planned to do, and how he calmly returned to confess to his child. They showed the note, proof that this crime wasn't born in a single heated argument, but carefully arranged long before August 28, 2024. The defense, on the other hand, tried to raise questions about Daniel's mental health. They pointed to his disturbing comments after murders, saying he wasn't in his right state of mind. But to the public, those arguments felt small against the devastating loss of Kelly and Kenneth. Kelly's loved ones sat in the courtroom, many of them holding back tears as they listened to the evidence. To them, this wasn't just about proving guilt. It was about giving Kelly and Kenneth the justice they deserved. Friends described Kelly as a woman with a light inside her, someone who cared deeply for her children and worked hard to build a life after divorce. Kenneth was remembered as a kind man who supported Kelly's new start. Both of them had futures stolen in an instant. The hardest part of the trial was hearing about the daughter. She hadn't just lost her mother, she lost her father too. Prosecutors explained how she had been made to wait in the car, unknowingly forced into the role of a witness. Her frantic text to her friends became evidence, showing the jury exactly how the night unfolded through her terrified eyes. In the end, the jury didn't need much time. The case was clear. Daniel Coppola was found guilty of murdering Kelly and Kenneth. The courtroom was silent as the verdict was read, a silence heavy with both relief and sorrow. Kelly's family finally had justice, but no sentence could ever bring her back. When the judge handed down the punishment, it was clear that Daniel would spend the rest of his life behind bars. For many, that was the only fitting end to a man who betrayed every vow he once made and every bond he once held. The story of Kelly Coppola became more than just another headline. On Long Island, it was a reminder of how quickly a family can be torn apart by betrayal and violence. It was a warning about the dangers of unchecked anger and the devastating cost of obsession. Neighbors still drive past the Coppola home and remember that night. They remember the sirens, the flashing lights, and the feeling that something had changed in their quiet community forever. Kelly's friends keep her memory alive by sharing stories of her kindness and her love for her children. Kenneth's family holds on to the image of him as a supportive partner and loyal father. For the teenage daughter, the scars of that night will never fully fade. She became the silent witness to one of Long Island's most shocking crimes. She was forced to carry the words no child should ever hear. I killed your mother and Kenny. The case of Kelly Coppola will always be remembered as a story of betrayal, murder, and justice. A story where a woman searching for happiness was met with unthinkable violence. A story where a community demanded answers and got them in the form of a guilty verdict. And a story where justice, though delayed by grief, was finally served. The trial ended, but the legacy remains. The Kelly Coppola story will forever be a reminder that true crime is not just about the act itself. It is about the lives lost, the families broken, and the pursuit of justice that follows.